Today's guest is Dionne Mejer, who is a 25-year sales and technology veteran specializing in helping leaders transform their sales team through tried and true methods. So, Dionne, thank you very much for being on. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well, thank you.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. I know before air, we were both like, yeah, it's pretty like solid, kind of chill Wednesday, which is like a nice change of pace. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping to enhance that experience with this podcast for you today.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'd love to just dive into and like basically like tell us a little bit more about the context of the bio, right? How did you get to doing what you're doing? What are you all about? Kind of floor is yours for that.
Oh gosh, thank you. I will try to keep it brief. It's hard to encapsulate a long time, a journey, right, into sound bites. But I've always loved technology, and I don't know why, but it's one of those things that I think there are certain things that speak to all of us. But I really like the human element and the people element of all of it. And that comes from my family, which is kind of funny. And so sales and people and just I come from a blue collar Midwest. All of my family was in the military. We get shit done. Excuse me. I don't mean to offend people with swearing, but like you get up, you get stuff done, you're productive, you have a schedule, you have a system, and you go. And I love inside sales for that reason. So 14 years ago, I started my first inside sales team because the notion of being outside sales and not getting anything done, it was just so inefficient, right? I'm not saying it's not needed. It just felt very inefficient. And but really driving into the efficiency and the effectiveness and the ability to connect, especially now in the 21st century with people, is just near and dear to my heart in so many ways. So that's where that is. And then probably 2013, 2010, somewhere around there, I was at a conference. I saw people speaking and I said I could do that. And that was kind of the next evolution for me in my career. And I had babies and I didn't want to see them 2 hours a day because that also seemed weird to me. How do you have a family and closeness if you literally see your kids like 2 or 3 hours a day? So I started my own consultancy to help companies at the time stand up their inside sales teams the right way the first time. We've since transformed our business in a few key areas because I want to be able to be with my kids. I don't ever want them to feel like they come second, right? I don't want my husband to feel that way. The dogs are a different story. And I want to be able to be present and not stressed out and running around like a crazy person all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of like why so many of us do our own businesses is to
Yeah.
kind of create that freedom. And I know it ends up being kind of this ironic thing that we actually end up creating a worse situation for
Yes.
ourselves. So the fact that you've taken active steps to like mitigate that, I think is a very obviously good thing.
Yeah, I
So
work
yeah,
more now than than when I was corporate, right? But
absolutely. No. It's it
okay.
comes up quite a lot in not just these interviews, but also like in the client work that I do, where it's like, yeah, like you at the end of the day, like your life should not be a liability to your business. You know what I mean? Like it should be the other way around. Your business should be an asset that helps you
Yes,
create your life, right? And I think we
100%.
oftentimes lose that perspective. So the fact that you're kind of already moving that direction and have done a lot of active steps to it, I think is awesome. So I mean, okay, so this might actually be a good segue to just dive into like what are like the biggest sort of mental stress issues that you're having around your business.
Yeah. Um, we are kind of rebuilding, not necessarily rebranding. I'm not quite there yet, but we're rebuilding because we repackaged some of our service offerings. And I've been on a journey of I knew I wanted to change my offerings and I didn't know what and I didn't know what to or how. I didn't have clarity in that. And so really just been on a journey. We had quite a few um, personal family blow up moments that were really, really hard and really impactful for all of us. And so we were really focused on navigating those waters. And at the time, it was nice to have my business running on muscle memory. And I was still able to do what I was doing. I was still able to show up, but I didn't have capacity to do something new. And because as an entrepreneur, that's a lot. It's a lot to put something together. It's a lot to go to market. It's a lot to build something and sell it and gain awareness and be an evangelist for it. So fast forward, I took some fractional roles that were more time consuming than I wanted them to be, partially because it's how I work, right? Partially it's because I love the work I do. And so exited some of those, and through that journey though realized the direction that I needed to take inside sales by design, and now we're rebuilding. So the stress is just, holy crap, how do we get to revenue quicker? How do we take some of these things, like at the market, we've got some pretty good market validation, but now it's okay, now we need to get to that revenue, and what happens after people say yes.
Got it. So do you think that what you need support with is mostly on the strategic end or on kind of the inner, how am I handling it end?
I think the strategy is okay. I can have those conversations, and I have them like 5 times a day with people. I think it's more the next evolution of that idea and being able to draw people in and giving them an easy way to say yes. Right. So we're putting together a webinar series, we're putting together an in-person event. And so I can go and talk to people about the ideas all day long, and they're like, oh, yeah, Dionne, that's amazing. And I'm like, great. And then I forget the next part, which is send them the registration link, right? Or like the end to end piece, because I love the ideation. So I think for
Mhm.
me, it's what is it? And it might be not a fear of success, because I've achieved every goal I've ever set, right? That doesn't bother me, but it's one of those things that, like, we're going to put on an in-person event in Orange County in January. And I had to stop and think, like, what is stopping me from picking up the phone and driving this 150 bajillion percent like I normally would? And
Mhm.
I don't know the answer to that.
So when you say picking up the phone to call,
Yeah.
is this like a common thing for you, or it's just it's in isolation to this one particular event?
It's a common thing because it's more about asking for what I want, right?
Okay.
And so when people would say, Dionne, what can I help you with? I'm like, oh no, I got it. Literally has been my answer up until like a year and a half ago.
So when it comes to asking for what I want, that's where there's an inner discomfort and inner resistance.
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying that's been across the board. Is it in your personal life as well? Only in the
Oh yeah.
business?
Oh no,
Across the
I'm
board.
terrible at asking for help and clearly asking for what I want. I can help other people, and I'm an amazing coach. Right? But for me, I'm always like, nope, I'm good. I'm good. I got it. I got it. I got it. Right? It's the over functioner, people pleaser, perfectionist, which isn't helpful at all. So I know all of those things. Now it's how do I transition it and like put the system in place to cross that bridge?
So do you think whatever system you put in place is ever going to overcome the fact that this is something that's an internal uncomfortable sensation for you?
I think it'll help.
It'll help bypass and mitigate it 110%. But do you think it's ever actually going to solve the core issue?
Probably not.
Okay. So I think that's the first place to start. It's like, is the core issue an inner issue, or is it a systems delegation and process issue?
Yeah. I think for me, having systems in place is a coping mechanism, right? And I tend to
Yes.
reverse engineer into some of that depending on the level of severity of the internal garbage.
Right. So you're aware that it's a coping
Yeah.
issue. Right.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So if it's a coping issue and you're aware of that, then why do you think your brain's going towards, okay, so how do I structure my way out of this discomfort?
Oh gosh. So probably hardwired since I was a toddler to have a plan, right? Like
Hmm.
it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to make a mistake, but you damn well better have a plan to fix it. So we were growing up in our house, there was not the whole, there was not the recognition of emotion, right? Which nowadays is the exact opposite, right? Nowadays we pour into emotion and don't have a plan. No offense to anybody. But back when I grew up with the family I had, it was, I really don't care how you feel. And there's some value in this, right? We just took it to an extreme, which was we don't really care how you feel. You still need to get up and go do your stuff. Right. And so, even just like a 30-second recognition of feelings and labeling them would have been tremendously helpful. Right. Like you're not going to stay there, but you need to acknowledge it in order to move on. And I think that's the issue. So I had a therapist a long time ago where he goes, I don't even know if you know you can identify more than two feelings at any given moment. And I'm like, you're probably right. So, no.
Yep. So again, very well and self-aware of like the origins that contribute to some of this, which is great. I mean, obviously that has its time and place. And when it comes to things like, okay, well, now it's up to me to pick up the phone and I can't seem to like pick it up. That like that's an emotional issue.
Mhm.
You can delegate that out, but at some point as the leader, you're going to have to make those calls. So it's always
Mhm.
going to fall back on you. And I think
Mhm.
the part that I'm seeing here is okay, so if you know that it's hard for you to ask for help, if you know that there's a lot of significance you get out of being able to be independent and like I got it, as soon as there's any hint of something that's not something you got or do need help with, it's like there's like a shutdown response. Like I
Mhm.
avoid it, I don't do it, I don't like put that under the rugs, like push it away. Like, is that accurate for you or no?
It is. I'm a huge avoider. So one of the things that my husband and I have done, there's a great marriage ministry called How We Love, and it's amazing. And I love what they do. And so they talk about how we're imprinted as kids, and that's kind of our not love language, but just kind of our pattern of behavior. And then they have some workshops and stuff that you can kind of go through and untangle some of that. And so, and they've got, a little quiz, if you will, to determine your love style. And so I am an avoider and pleaser. So for those of you that are interested in getting to the bottom of some of that, and that's exactly it, is I'm an avoider and I'm a pleaser. And so anytime there's some like just tell me what you want and I'll do it, which is what also makes me very good at sales and makes me very good as a coach and business partner, right? Because I can mind read in some cases and I can do those things. But when it comes to as an avoider, that's exactly what that is, which is growing up, not a lot of emotion. It's not that my parents didn't love me. Like I'm not blaming my parents here, right? But it's we're not going to talk about those things. We're not going to address those things. We're not going to get to the bottom of those things. You're going to go watch your sister. You're going to go do this. You're going to get straight A's. You're going to do these things in order to do this, right? Um, so high avoider. Now to that point though is because of the work ethic I have. It's also in order to be successful, you do need to do these things you're really uncomfortable with. And so that's where creating the system to do those things. So I'm still on the phone all day, right? I still do what I need to do, but I'm not as successful as I am because I'm probably mentally blocked in some way, shape, fashion, or form.
Right. Okay. So again, great awareness. So let's zoom out a little bit and let's look at okay, so how are these creating tangible problems inside of your business, right? So if you look at something like the avoider aspect,
Mhm.
okay. So how is this creating problems inside of your business?
I, I think I think I'm I'm not doing as much as I could be as quickly as I could.
Okay. So get more specific. Like what does that actually mean for you specifically?
Um, like for a very long time, I would push myself, right, as an overachiever. I graduated college in 3.5 years with a double major and a minor, right? I started my own business. It's just that very high functioning overachiever.
Hmm.
Um, and now, and especially what happened in the last 5 years, a part of me is like, no, I'm okay to kind of just move at a slower pace, right? And instead of maybe making 50 attempts today to do outreach, I'm going to make 20 and I'm going to be okay with it, right? And so it's not bad,
Hmm.
but I'm not pushing myself the way I normally would. And I'm not motivated to, which kind of scares me because that's also not me.
Okay. So it's interesting because I'd really asked you, okay, so as an avoider or as somebody who's aware that you have the avoiding pattern,
Yeah.
how is this creating problems inside of your business specifically?
Uh-huh.
Where your brain went to was pretty much just giving me more examples of, well, I'm not pushing myself, I'm not motivated. It's kind of like the symptoms of
Yeah.
avoidance,
Yeah.
i.e., you avoided the direct question, okay, which is right on pattern. So we can confirm that that one is actually there. So
Oh,
if we go
well.
back to the original question, right, like I really want this to get real for you. So how is the avoider part of you creating problems inside of your business?
Hmm. Not probably driving to talk to people and clients, prospective clients in the way I need to, because I'm
Okay.
circling the issue.
So not talking to prospective clients as much as you would like.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you say as much as I would like, and you don't have to give me like specific numbers here, but like, are we talking, I'm talking to 30% of my potential prospects that I have goals for, or 80, because that's a whole different ball game, right? So what
Yeah.
would you say that is more specifically?
Yeah. I think I'm probably operating at like a 50% capacity.
Okay. So 50% capacity as far as bringing in new business.
Mhm.
Okay. So in that case, you could say that you're basically avoiding making 50% more revenue.
Yeah.
Okay. So how does that land for you internally when I reflect that back?
I have so many thoughts,
Okay.
partially because there's a part of me that is learning to not be as critical of myself. So a part of me is, but I also don't want to excuse it, right? So this is where I flip flop, where I'm like, it's okay. And then the other part of me that is super hard driving is like, no, it's effing not. Get off your butt and do what you know that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's the tangle I have right now
Right.
is I get the self-care, I get compassion, I get all of that, but it's balancing that with being a driver.
Right. So it's like an
Or
inner conflict between kind of the judging part that's like get off your ass and do something, and then
yeah,
the kind of softer compassionate part which is like, okay, well, that's okay, like you've done a lot, like you kind of, it's okay to go at a slower pace.
right.
So it seems like that push pull is also keeping you in limbo because you're kind of not going anywhere with it either. Like neither voice is actually dominant and neither voice is actually the solution. Right. Okay. Perfect. Because, and the reason I bring that up is because that dynamic of like limbo, that often is the dynamic internally of what externally we'll call self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm leaving 50% of my revenue on the table by basically underperforming by 50% of what I feel like I'm capable of. And yet I can't bring myself to do something about it.
Right.
Okay. So when I reflect that back, because I see like, okay, there's like a deflation in how you're showing up. Like what's the internal experience like for you when I reflect that back?
Uh oh crap. That's what that feels like. And then a part of me from a management of emotions perspective is, okay, why am I doing that? Right. So I get really analytical around emotion,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just to try to understand it.
So to what degree do you think you can outthink your emotions?
Oh, zero.
Right. So now it's getting into the biggest toolkit and the solution that I have to solve this problem is like using a screwdriver where I need a hammer.
Yeah.
Okay. So what lands for you there?
Well, shit, then what tool do I need? Like, how do I get a hammer?
So the first thing I think that has to land for you, and why I'm kind of asking you all of these questions, is like nobody cares about solving an avoidance problem until it becomes an actual real tangible problem that has consequences and with the people that I work with inside of their business.
Mm-hmm.
Like if your avoidance didn't contribute to 50% less revenue than you're capable of, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
True.
So that's the first part that needs to land, because until you realize what problem you actually have and that
Mm-hmm.
you're not solving the wrong problem, it goes back like you can't change what you can't see. And it
Mm-hmm.
seems to me like when we started this conversation, why it took some prompting was like, okay, there was like the sense of like self-awareness is enough. Like I know my patterns, that's enough, but like, okay, whatever. Right. And it took some prompting to actually get you to land on something tangible,
Mm-hmm.
like 50% loss of potential. So just
Right.
before I go on, what lands for you there?
um, I think when you said the word enough, right, is a big one because yeah, there for me, there's this I'll go to a certain point and then stop.
And what point is that usually?
Instead of going over the top, I'm like, oh, it's good enough, right? Like, oh, I made, half the calls I wanted to make today, or I've achieved, half of the things that I know need to get done. It's good,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I've never been a mediocre person, so it's very scary.
Right.
So
So now it seems like it's more of the norm than it is the exception.
yeah,
Okay. So you're saying this never happened when you were in school and it didn't sound like it happened when you were in corporate, correct?
correct. No,
Okay. What do you think the difference is between those and then your business right now?
I don't know the answer to that.
So, in general, when I have somebody with these types of patterns, usually what it falls to is you excelled in areas where there was direct expectation in other people watching and expecting you to perform well,
Mm.
i.e., school and corporate. There's clear
Mm-hmm.
standards on what you need to hit, there's clear pathway on what you need to hit. Don't hit
Mm-hmm.
it. These are the direct consequences, and these are the people that are going to be upset in this particular way. These are the people you're going to let down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Your own business, you are both the creator of the standards and the executioner of those standards.
Mm-hmm.
So the missing piece that drove you, especially for somebody who has a people pleasing pattern,
Mm-hmm.
to drove you to perform is actually not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so you're nodding your head. So what's landing for you with all of this?
um, That's really, really good because I teach that to a lot of my clients, right? Especially now when you've got folks coming out of college in their 20s, late 20s, who've never had an unstructured motion their entire life. And my whole life was unstructured for the most part, right? Um, and so highly, highly self-disciplined. So to hear you say that resonates because I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I was highly self-disciplined up until a certain point. And then this year, when I said I'm going to start working with a team, was to what you just said, huge because I won't let other people down.
Correct. But you will let,
Myself, I'm okay to skate, but for other
right.
people, and not skate in a bad way, like I'm still going to get stuff done because I have children to support, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I won't let other people down.
So why are the standards higher for other people than for yourself?
I don't know the answer to that either, except I'm like, I'm okay.
So okay, I'm okay means I am okay to tolerate crappier standards for myself, but God forbid I allow those standards to like essentially get violated for other people.
Mhm. Yeah.
So basically, you're okay to endure and to tolerate things you don't want 50% less of your capability
Mhm.
because nobody's actually keeping you accountable.
Mhm.
Okay. Is that how you want to actually live?
No.
No. Okay. So what's the internal feeling when I reflect that back?
There's some conviction for sure. I have my list of soul words on my wall over here. Like I have to reference a list of feeling words, right?
Mhm.
I think there's definitely some conviction.
So conviction for what?
Um, so there's certain keywords that you're saying, like enough and now accountability, where part of it is like I didn't think I needed that because I was relying so much on my own self-discipline to do the right thing, right?
So, and even just that to get more specific with the language, were you self-disciplined because you were very self-accountable to the people around you, or were you self-disciplined on your own accord?
It was my own accord for sure, right?
Okay,
Because
so
I
if
was
it's your own
like,
accord, then why
yeah,
aren't you able to translate it now where it's just you by yourself?
I I don't know.
Okay. Well, that's the part I invite you to consider. I don't doubt that you were self-disciplined in that you had a lot of intentionality in what you did and how you did it and to systematize it. That's abundantly clear just given like your bio. What I'm getting at is words are very important with regards to the definitions we give them because it some ways shapes our reality.
Mhm.
So yes, you exhibited the behaviors of self-discipline, but it was only under the constraints and the conditions of being held accountable to other people.
Mhm.
Meaning, if you're left on your own, you're actually 50% avoidant, 50% disciplined.
Mm.
So, what you actually lack is the self trust to set and keep your standards
Mm.
with the discipline that you exhibit when other people are around, but not to yourself by yourself.
I like that.
So, what lands for you there?
The word of self-trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what lands for you about self trust?
Um, so with a lot of the things that we're doing now with the business, that was exactly it was, do I trust myself to take some of these things to completion? Because I can do ideation.
Mm-hmm.
The next step is landing the proverbial plane and giving people action to take,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so knowing that about myself, and then to your point, connecting with those emotions of crap, I'm scared, right? And well, people are going to say yes, right? I've yet to have people say, "Oh, Dionne, that's a terrible idea,"
Mm-hmm.
right? To do a lot of things from the business perspective, and so now they say, and I'm like, "Oh crap, they're going to say yes," and then what? Now I've got a whole slew of stuff to do and put all this together. I'm like, crap,
Right.
right? So do
So
I trust myself to dive in and stay uncomfortable, ask for help, and get this done.
Right. So ideation is safe
Oh,
because
totally.
it leads to no actual implementation and action, meaning the
Hmm.
stakes are very low
Yeah.
for that, right?
Yes.
As soon as those ideas start to become, oh crap, this is going to go real,
Yeah.
the fear kicks in, consciously or not. And basically, it seems like there's some self sabotage that's happening there
Hmm.
as well. I delay, I stall, I overthink, I question it, whatever, whatever, whatever.
Hmm.
Right. So 110%, that is also self trust because, again, you can't set, like, you don't trust yourself to set and maintain and execute your own standards like you did when other people were around.
Hmm.
Right. So, as far as like leadership is concerned, that's obviously a big one because that's why you're in a leadership position, is to do all of those things. So I know this is all like landing for you. I see you shaking your head, etc. So if let's zoom out a bit again, right? So we had discussions around like tolerating things that are subpar, the self-trust to not set your own standards. So let's just say if we look at the self-trust, right? How is this creating problems inside of your business?
Um, well, again, I won't follow through on promises I made, and I don't want to be that person, right? So, I mean, outside of a revenue hit, now I'm looking at reputation and brand and identity and things of that nature, right? As everybody would. But
Mm-hmm.
that's important, right? Partially because I like to give and that fills my tank, right? So that's a big problem because I don't want to be that person either.
Right. Okay. So I won't follow through on the promises I keep. Okay. So let's dive in further because like that isn't really a defined problem inside of your business. Like, do you not even say yes to opportunities because of this, or do you fall flat on fulfillment on opportunities?
Um, I've become more selective.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on the opportunity, knowing myself, right, and the self trust and sometimes of the self sabotage, I wouldn't undertake certain things. And
Okay.
so maybe avoidance or just not doing it, right? But now knowing these things, knowing as an avoider, right, we're launching this webinar series and we're going to launch an in person event. And I am so far outside of my comfort zone and I am asking people for help
Mm-hmm.
and determined to get through a lot of the feelings I have that are self sabotaging.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's where I volley back and forth between setting up the system I know I need that's going to help me stay motivated and then diving into like what is the actual issue so that I can resolve it and identify it and know kind of how to manhandle it a little bit and call it false.
Okay. So what I heard there was kind of like a description of what you intend to do to solve like the issue versus like that kind of discipline part of like I just got to push through this and like push through the self sabotage because we have this event that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. It also doesn't really answer the question of how self trust like creating problems within your business.
Oh, well, it hasn't in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe only insofar as not necessarily achieving some more revenue, right? But I've
Okay.
never missed a client deadline, things of that nature, right? But to that point, from a self-trust perspective, there were things that I wanted to do that didn't make it past the ideation stage,
Okay.
right? And
So it
so,
seems like it doesn't affect fulfillment because which
correct.
makes sense because that affects other people. I don't want to look bad to them. I made them a promise that like that's
Right.
not me. Makes
Yeah, I'm not
sense.
going to let people down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So making sense from the perspective of like, that's the constraints now that get you to work, and then also the people pleasing aspect. So that's like
Yeah,
right within the pattern. But it
totally.
seems like, again, the lack of self-trust, it's on the opportunities end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
It is the hidden losses of not either executing on ideas or saying no to opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I think what's stripping me up a little bit too is the self-trust, because I hear that, but I think sometimes it's more self-worth, right?
Okay.
And so I am a domestic violence survivor, and I've got two kids. I've got one on the spectrum, right? I am remarried. And I think that's a lot of it, right? Is going through a court case and having to testify and put this person in a box and have this person be a good father, right? To both of our children, especially one, my son's on the autism spectrum, right? Like that takes up a lot of mind share. And so growing up the way we did too, like it's a bigger piece, it's a bigger picture of self-worth. And it literally wasn't until going through some therapy motions where it's like, Dionne, you have to identify what you're not going to tolerate. And I was in my 40s and I was like, oh, I have that choice, because you go through these motions and you get um manipulated and brainwashed and all this other stuff, right? Which is also embarrassing. So there's a part of it where I'm like, I am amazing at work. How the hell did this happen? Right. And so because they're so incongruent and they're so far apart from each other, that's what is that limbo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's called the narcissistic fog, right? Of just trying to recover from some of that. And so I think that's a lot of what is going on too, is how to get out of that fog. And it literally wasn't until this year that I'm identifying it, recognizing it, identifying it, and then taking the steps to really land the plane, right? So I spent a lot of time, to your point, like the self-awareness and education and all that good stuff. And it literally was this year where it's like, okay, now how do we start moving? Like how do we get past this, out of the ideation and knowledge phase into wisdom, and wisdom comes from doing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's where it's one of those things of, like, I literally, with my 14-year-old daughter, and for anybody who's got a teenage daughter, God bless us all, right? Um, she's full on attitude and all that good stuff, which is fine. She's doing what she's supposed to be doing, but literally have a conversation with her of, I will not tolerate. And I never in my life thought I would ever say those words. Right. And now putting this event together, I've got two individuals who are um, choosing to not get along. And now I need to go have a conversation with two grown adults and talk about how things I will not tolerate. And literally, it still scares me. But up until this year, and even part of this conversation, I wouldn't address it. I would let it go.
Yeah.
But now it's 100% ownership, and it's 100% self-worth of, this is what I deserve to be treated like in a dignified manner, whether I'm at work, home, school, the football stands, the soccer stadium, and everybody deserves that.
Love it. And I acknowledge you for sharing such a vulnerable thing, because I think it's something that gets swept under the rug of shame unnecessarily. So I appreciate you going there. And yes, I do agree with you that ultimately it comes down to self-worth. And what I'm hearing by your share is like, you have reconciled and healed a lot of these parts in your kind of personal life, right? There's a level of empowerment that I'm going to show up with in the world, as a result of these experiences. I'm going to be stronger for them in these areas where I think you've had blind spots and are starting to uncover them. is starting to recognize how they show up in the leadership of your business,
Mm-hmm.
right? Standards are built upon a foundation of self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
So while you might have improved the self-worth aspects of yourself and how you want to be treated in relationships, which it sounds like you're in a much healthier place with that, it's like I've never been pressed to actually explore how that shows up in business, right? And
No.
now the problems that are in front of you,
Yeah.
like I'm underworking by 50%, I'm unnecessarily saying no to opportunities, I'm self-sabotaging the work that can bring in more business, right? And we didn't really get into the leadership aspects of the people pleasing, etc., which you alluded to. All of the inner stuff is now bleeding into the leadership of your business, and that's what's creating these underperforming problems as far as like the business pieces. It's like if I want
Mm-hmm.
to solve those, like we started at the beginning, the more you focus on mitigating or coping with strategies, the more those are going to be duct tape solutions.
Yeah.
They're going to help, they have their time and place, but they're never really going to be the thing that's going to help you scale with less stress, because like you're going to do one duct tape thing and there's only going to be the next one that comes
Yeah.
afterwards. So there's going to be the next event, the next phone call, the next awkward conversation, right? And like we alluded to before, if you are just trying to outthink your emotions, that's always going to be the bottleneck with regards to how smoothly, how quickly, and how well you outperform these and really move beyond these
Yeah.
leadership limits. So I know that was a lot, but what's landing for you there?
Oh man, so much. I have so many thoughts going through my head right now. Um, I 100% agree with you. Like I avoided so much, right? Partially because of the whole people pleasing, um, and just the whole, growing up in the 80s, and it's just a little bit different, right? And I don't like conflict. I grew up in that, right? And so learning how to show up and manage, and again, having strategies around and going, man, I don't like this conflict right now, and I'm having a really hard time with it. I'm going to deal with that. Here's how I'm going to show up with it because I'll fight, right? I'm like, hey, man, you got to be quiet. Like, this is work. I go to work to not deal with the crap I dealt with at home, right? So don't show up and be a jackwagon. And it's everywhere right now. It's pretty bad. So, um, I hear you. I think it's a matter of taking a lot of what I've learned and getting to the bottom of it, especially at work now, right? And so like we're doing a lot of different things and I'm inviting people in and then being aware as a pleaser and then putting boundaries in place, which I've never done either. So it's a whole new world of boundaries.
So I think that's actually a good note as well. So what are your tools to actually deal with these inner leadership limits?
Well, again, I do put systems in place only because it's such a default for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it is about setting goals and then it's recognizing what do I know and what do I not know and where do I need help and what type of help do I need. So starting to get really specific and then taking it through like, okay, what happens? Like what happens when this event in Orange County sells out, right? And people say good job. Like I don't do well with that either,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um so I'm going to have to learn. Like I have to get to the bottom of that and be like, no, it is going to be good and I do want to help people. I don't need a pat on the back for it. I want people to be successful, right?
Okay. So going with this recurring theme, right? So the question was like, what tools do you have to actually
Yeah.
like solve this at the root, like to heal this? And where your brain went to was, well, I continue to make systems to basically, bypass and cope with this. I'm gonna ask where I need help. I'm
Yeah.
gonna essentially look at the strategies. Okay, cool. Are any of those things actually gonna help you solve the core
Think
issue,
they're
which
gonna
is
be a good
emotional?
duct tape, but like I don't know the answer to that question, right? So that's the difficulty.
Okay, perfect. So, right. even if I don't know the answer, right? Where does your brain default to? I have to just say something so I look okay, right?
Well, and I'm gonna have a plan,
Yeah,
right?
and I'm gonna have a
So
plan. Correct.
that's the default, is we're always gonna have a plan.
So if we're gonna go to like the root of it, like, do you actually have any tools to help yourself heal out of these inner limits that are basically creating these underperforming problems in your business?
No, because I don't even know what those tools would be.
Okay,
Having a
perfect.
plan,
But like
right?
that's an important fact to like get honest with,
Yeah.
because those tools definitely do exist. This is all everything that you're describing, from the self-worth to the people pleasing to the avoidance, like all of those patterns are 110% healable patterns,
Mhm.
right? But if your brain is focused on, well, I need more systems, I need more people to support me, and I need to like delegate, do you think you're perpetuating a solution or you're perpetuating more duct tape?
More duct tape.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that's landing for you, right? And then it comes
Yeah.
down to like, do you want to continue perpetuating duct tape, or do you want to continue like
No, 'cause I
actually
don't.
moving in the direction of the solution?
Oh no, no. I think definitely moving in the direction of the solution, no matter how uncomfortable I'm going to be with it, right? Because I don't do well in limbo either. Like I'm a pretty concrete thinker, and that's the driving force of my frustration, right? Is I know something isn't right, and that's the definition of insanity, right? So what do I do? Like where do I go get these tools? Is there a book I read? Like what do I do? Right? Like tell me what to do.
Well, I
And I'll
mean,
go.
short answer is you work with me through the Up Level Mind program. Long answer is the first thing you have to recognize is all of the tools that you need in order to do this come in the form of, firstly, healing all of the limiting beliefs you have around all of this stuff and what it means for you to people please, or what it means for you to say no, what it means for you to be in conflict, what it means for you to avoid, etc. So you're going to
Mhm,
clear things on the mental level.
mhm.
Then you take the charge out of all of the behaviors that are creating these patterns. So for example, you mentioned I'm uncomfortable many times. Your nervous system doesn't ever get uncomfortable or comfortable by accident. It has to find safety in whatever it is that you're doing. So the only way for you to actually be comfortable is to take the negative charge of these emotions out. You basically delete that charge so that it's just easier to take the natural strategic next step. And then number three, you have to embody this in your field of play, which is your business. Meaning you can do all the healing work, like, okay, like we go into process, we do all of the things. And if you can't embody it inside of your business, like you can't show up as a leader who doesn't people please, who is decisive, who sets her own standards and meets them, then it's kind of irrelevant. So it's kind of the three things that have to match for you to truly eliminate these patterns from your life. You got to solve them on the level of the mind, you got to discharge them from the body, and you have to embody them in the actions that you do consistently. Like that's when you create who it is that you want to be as a leader. That's not going to underperform by 50%, but increase everything by 100%. So what lands for you out of that?
It all makes sense, right? Like I got that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, no, I think it all makes a ton of sense. And it's before everything happened, I was that leader. I mean, I've had all my people I've reported to, CEOs, whatever, like, Dionne, you are a badass, right? And then I go through this craziness and the court system and everything else. And it deflated me 100%.
Yeah,
Right. And and that's where it's like, I don't, who is this person who thinks mediocrity is okay? Because literally up until 5 years ago, that wasn't the case.
correct.
Right.
And the good news for you is you actually have historic evidence that you
Mhm,
can perform 10
mhm,
times better than you're performing right now.
mhm,
What you lack is basically the healing work needed, the deletion
mhm,
work needed to transfer that performance when it's just you by yourself for yourself and nobody else.
mhm.
That's like if you like your specific issue comes down to that. You can't translate your performance capability into your current performance capacity. Because if
Yeah,
you could do that, like we wouldn't even be here.
yeah,
But it's because it's you on your own, setting the standards for your own self-worth, having everything fall on you as far as like the people pleasing, like having to trust yourself to set your own standards and meet them. All of that is like you're playing in a different
yeah.
sport. And that's why you can't transfer the qualities you already know you possess. Like that's the real friction point for you internally. So
Mm,
what lands for you there?
I like the word friction. Yeah. Yeah, because I hear you, but I've been in corporate America for so long, I think in bullet points, right? So even when I had to do my testimony, I put everything in a PowerPoint. So
Yeah, that's okay.
um yeah, it worked. So yeah, no, I think all of that makes a ton of sense, right? And helps drive a lot of the clarity because that's what gets me. And I don't know about anybody else who's listening to this, right? But it's the why. Like I get the what, right? And I'm somebody who will drive to find answers, right? I've got a bookshelf full of stuff to get answers, right? But I think to your point, identifying the how and the tools and what works and what doesn't and stuff, right, is exactly it. So,
Fair enough. Well, again, I wish I could solve all of that for you
oh,
right here, right now. But in terms of just like highlighting what the core issues are and kind of how this is all creating problems within your business, like does this feel complete for you, or is there still something left outstanding?
no, I think that's enough for now. So I'm sure there's probably more to unpack, but I think those are kind of the big ones.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, in that case, why don't you just close us off and let everybody know where to find you, who's the best person to find you? Floor is yours for that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I am definitely on LinkedIn. So that's the best place to find me and connect with me. We've got an amazing pop-up webinar series coming, meaning it's only here for a short amount of time. And again, we brought a slew of folks with wellness to HR to actual sales tips and tricks for everybody. So I encourage you to take advantage of that as well. And then I look forward to talking with people when you get a chance.
Awesome. Well, Dionne, thank you very much for coming here, allowing yourself to be witnessed in this way. And for everybody listening, we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.